Chapter 1, Appearance. Betsy stood with damp hands on the threshold of the old mansion. She stared at the door for a while, hesitating to enter. It was the second place she had looked in a day. She was already ready to make a deal with the owner of the house, but looking at this lock made her dizzy. The oxidized metal of the lock seemed very old and flimsy from the looks of it. It looked like anyone who wanted to could easily pick it, but Betsy decided to muster up all her courage, for this house was the perfect place for a fresh start. She took a deep breath and slowly turned the key. That overwhelming smell of tar, old wood, and musk doused her as she made her way inside. The rickety floor rubbed beneath her feet. A faint clicking sound came from the walls, and Betsy's eyes lit up with wonder. The house was much larger than she had imagined in the advertisements for sale. Every room was decorated with fancy rugs, expensive antique furniture, and sparkling crystal chandeliers. Betsy realized that this place was designed to dispel her anxieties. For the first time in a long time, she felt real comfort, but soon she noticed something strange. In the evenings, Betsy heard footsteps on the top floor and doors opening and closing on their own. Another time she saw a pale figure, like a ghost, outside the window. Betsy looked around confusedly, but saw nothing. She felt that the house had secrets of its own. With each passing day, Betsy noticed more and more that there was something wrong with this house. She realized that there was something more here than just an object for sale, that this house had a will of its own. Betsy was beginning to question her decision to move here. Chapter 2, Awakening. The hero cautiously made his way through the dark corridors of the mysterious house, trying to find his way out. His heart was beating like an anxious drum, and his hands were sweating with exertion. He did not want to believe in the existence of those forces that could control this house, but still he could not shake off the feeling that everything was filled with menace and unseen danger. His gaze happened to fall upon an old magazine that lay on the floor in the corner of the room. Without thinking, the hero picked it up and began to read. The magazine described the life story of the previous owner of this sinister house, a man who had been broken and mired in all sorts of sins and crimes. His greed knew no bounds, and he was willing to do anything for material wealth, even murder. In the end, he committed suicide by throwing himself from a window to the ground. The hero closed the magazine and looked around. He felt uncomfortable. For a few minutes he stood pondering what was happening to him. But then he decided to move on. But where to? No matter how fast he ran, there was no way he could get out of this prison created by some evil spirit. All night long, the hero was tormented by terrible nightmares. Shadows and evil spirits haunted him, often passing into reality each time he woke up. He saw the dead previous owner of the house in front of him. He understood that the house did not possess only its will, but that it intended to drag him into danger. He felt that this house drew him to itself, forcing him to stay inside. He was drowning in this ominous presence and could not escape. And then he heard a quiet, inhuman breathing behind him. He turned, but saw no one. Then he felt a slight chill run down his back and realized that he would be caught up. Then he woke up abruptly, jumped to his feet, and paused for a few seconds to recover his senses. Then he looked around. All was quiet and peaceful. This house seemed to be waiting for no one. Whoever they were, shadows, spirits, or whatever, they were here, present on the floor. And he began to realize that this was all really happening. He felt an elusive sense of anger and rage born within the house. This house seemed to be hated by all living things, and he would not be able to get away from it. It was a trap, and there was no way out of it. So he spent the night clutching his magazine and waiting for something to happen. He knew he had to run, but he didn't know where. He was alone and feared he would be swallowed whole by this house. And then he heard a sound, as if someone was rustling through the corridor. He moved cautiously in that direction, preparing to fight evil, but no one appeared. He felt fear in his bones for centuries, but in that moment he realized that he was no longer alone within these walls. Something secret was waiting for him in the shadows, and he could not let it happen. He began searching quickly for doors and windows, but none of them worked. He closed his eyes and thought to take a calm assessment of his situation. All he had at the moment was his mind and his journal, he thought, which was just his way out of this nightmare. But then he heard heavy breathing above his head and opened his eyes. Above him hovered a presence of some kind, carrying danger. The hero realized he had to act quickly and snatched up his notebook. "Devil," he whispered through his teeth. And the powerful body flew away, taking its strength in the shadows. The hero exhaled in relief. He knew that this power within the house could drive him away even more violently at any moment. He knew he couldn't stay here much longer and began to move faster, but the shadows still remained, haunting him. "I can't stay here. I have to leave," he thought, and realized that the least he could do was to try to find a way out. Step by step, he walked through the corridors, feeling the cold, ghostly touches on him. But he kept walking, clutching his notebook tightly in his hand and knowing that it was the only thing that would get him out of this nightmarish world. Chapter 3, The Victim. The hero continued to explore the house, but each time he felt as if someone's eyes were following him. He could not understand where they were coming from. But he sensed that something was waiting for him in the shadows. One day, Hero found a hidden room behind a huge bookshelf. As he got closer, he noticed strange symbols on the walls. Suddenly, a voice in his head said, "We demand a sacrifice every year to preserve our home." The hero froze, as if waiting for it to continue, but nothing happened. His head became painful, and he staggered involuntarily, resting his face against the wall. "This will not do." The hero shrieked, "I will not be your next victim." The hero remembered his backpack and started looking for something to help him against the house. He managed to find a little book about an ancient cult, and he realized that it was the only thing that could help him in this situation. He slid down the stairs, holding the book in his hand. Hero felt something stop in front of him, and he froze. There was a ringing in his head, and the sound seemed to intensify by the second. Hero decided to act quickly. He opened the book and began to read. "Let me go. I will not hinder you." He read the words, which should have triggered the power of some kind of spell. Only this time the words were more effective than he expected, and the gloom of the hero figure emerged, clear and lively, as if it had emerged from the darkness. Then it dissipated, leaving only the faint smell of tar and herbs in the air. The hero knew that the house would not give up without a fight, but now he was ready for any challenge. He went back to his backpack and picked up his flashlight. Ready to fight anyone who got in his way. "I will not give you myself," he said firmly. "I will do anything to avoid your sacrifice. I will not allow your sacrifice," he said in short but firm voice. The hero lit the lantern and moved forward. Aware that his life and soul were in danger, he was ready to fight to the end to survive this time. Chapter 4, Redemption. Hero stood in front of the house, feeling his soul enveloped in a painful longing. How long had he been here? He did not know. It seemed to him that this place had been his prison for an eternity, but today he was determined to be free. The hero knew that there was a sinister entity in the house that demanded a sacrifice. He saw how it took its victims, how it stroked their hair before taking their lives. He could not allow that to happen. His conscience would not allow him to remain speechless. The hero made the decision to destroy the house to the ground. He looked at the house, gauging the intensity of his resolve. Hero did not know how he would do it, but he was willing to do anything for his freedom. He began to look for a way out. The first plan that came to his mind was to use the gas cylinder lying in the basement, but then the house could flood with gas, which would lead to irreversible, terrible consequences. The hero realized that something more thoughtful was needed. He decided to go through all the rooms and look for a way out. The skin on his body clenched with horror. All the rooms became the same. Everything seemed hopeless. But the hero kept looking despite all the obstacles, and in the end, he found a way out. He discovered that the only way to destroy the sinister essence of the house was to burn it to the ground. The hero could not believe his luck. He knew it was a risky plan, but he was willing to take the risk. Hero began to prepare for his mission. He procured everything he needed: gasoline, matches, kerosene. He knew he would need it all to achieve his goal. He prepped all the corners of the house and gathered all the valuables he could salvage. Everything was ready. The hero began his sinister plan of destruction over this house of horror. He wished to get rid of the evil spirit so that it could no longer demand victims. He poured gasoline along the walls, leaving a trail of corrosive kerosene behind him. Then he pulled out his matches and, with an almost composed smirk on his face, he, in an instant, gave a spark to the tar and everything exploded. Everything was quickly engulfed in flames like a fast motor on acceleration. The hero realized that by the time he left here, the house would already be razed to the ground, but he was no longer paying attention. He knew it was the only thing he had to do. As he walked down the street in that evening, his businesslike look and his strange granite gaze showed only one thing: the burned-out house where the sinister entity lived could never again cause fay. Barring terror in people, he shuddered as he swallowed his saliva. There were many questions in his mind about what the future held for him, but one thing was certain: he would no longer be made to play the victim. He wanted to live free and give all his strength and knowledge to another great cause.